What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go over all of the important stats as well as best attachment combinations on every weapon in Modern Warfare. In today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the 3-round burst assault rifle, and this is the FR556. And first up, as always, let's have a look at the damage profile. The damage profile is 40-32, which means this is going to be a 3 to 4 shot kill, and keep in mind with this gun, there are no body multipliers, so it doesn't matter if you're shooting them in the toe or the upper chest, you're going to be dealing the same amount of damage. As for headshots, we get a solid headshot multiplier of 1.6, which takes our headshot damage profile to a 64-51. What this means is in the standard 3-shot kill range, just one bullet to the chest and one to the head will end up being a kill, which is often a good thing to aim for because then you're much more likely to get those one burst kills. Just keep in mind though, you typically don't want to be aiming directly for the head. You want your second or third bullet within the burst to hit the head. As for our rate of fire, this is roughly 1,000 rounds per minute within the burst itself. Keeping in mind, this is extremely difficult to hand test really accurately, but this is the value that does match the actual time to kill that you will experience. So that's an insanely fast rate of fire, but keep in mind that's just within the burst. We also get a 225 millisecond burst delay. So between each burst, you have to wait that 225 milliseconds. What this means for our time to kill is in the 3-shot kill range, assuming you get that one burst kill, your time to kill is just 120 milliseconds, which is one of the fastest killing guns in the game, assuming body shots. If you miss a bullet or you end up in the 4-shot kill range though, keep in mind you now have to wait for that burst delay, so our time to kill drops fairly considerably down to 345 milliseconds. I should also point out, in those situations within the standard 3-shot kill range where your first bullet hits the body and the second bullet hits the head, your time to kill at this point is just 60 milliseconds, which is nearly instant. When you factor in lag as well as a tick rate in various game modes, you're basically dying in like 1 to 2 frames on your end when you get killed by the Famas in these situations. As for our range, we've got about a 30-meter 3-shot kill range, which isn't too bad, but just know if you are stretching it out and trying to pick people off at a distance, it is often going to take you that extra burst to get a kill. Also, with suppressors, just like with most of the guns, the lightweight suppressor will reduce your range by 25%, which I definitely wouldn't recommend, and the monolithic suppressor will increase your range by just 7.5%, which is hardly noticeable. As for hardcore, this gun is always going to be a one-shot kill, no matter where you hit them and no matter what range you're at. For hipfire, as you can see here, it has the worst hipfire spread in the assault rifle category, and this makes sense because even with the worst hipfire spread, if you get really up close and personal, I find that I'm often still just getting those one burst kills. So if it were any tighter than this, it would be way too effective, I think. As for our idle sway, there is very little idle sway with this gun, which is great news because it is very important to hit that first shot very accurately, because the next 2 shots in the burst kind of have a mind of their own to an extent, so you want to make sure that first shot is landing exactly where you want it to. Speaking of that recoil, one really nice thing with this is this gun always recenters between bursts, even if you're trying to fire those bursts as fast as possible. And what this means is by the time your next burst is firing, your point of aim is going to be the same as your point of aim on the last burst, assuming you didn't move your aim at all. Having said that, there absolutely is some vertical recoil and a little bit of side-to-side movement when it comes to the bursts. It's not too horrible, but when you're starting to stretch those ranges out, especially against an enemy that might be on cover, for instance, it's going to be pretty difficult to hit those multiple consecutive shots. Moving on to our aim down sight time, this isn't really all that great for an assault rifle at 317 milliseconds. It's not the worst though, it is a little bit better than the Scar as well as the Odin. But aside from that, it's not really great in this department. Our sprint out time, on the other hand, is normal for assault rifles at 267 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 400 milliseconds for our tactical or super sprint out time. Our magazine capacity is pretty normal at 30 rounds with 60 in reserve. And our reload add time is a little on the slow side for assault rifles at 1.65 seconds. If you wanted to speed that up though, you could use the sleight of hand weapon perk, which will cut that down to 1.17 seconds. This brings us to our movement speed, which isn't really out of the ordinary for assault rifles, but a little bit on the slow side at 93%. And our aim down sight stray speed is one of the slower ones at 47.5%. And with that, that pretty much covers it for the important base stats for the FR556. But we also have some unique attachments, and hopping into the first ones, these are the barrel attachments. First up, we have the FR 15.9-inch Commando Barrel. This is the shorter barrel, which improves our aim down sight time, which improves our aim down sight time by a pretty noticeable amount, by roughly 12%. So our new aim down sight time is 284 milliseconds, which is much better. And on top of that, our overall movement speed is improved by about 1%. Now, this does come at the cost of bullet velocity, so it is going to be a bit more difficult to hit those shots at longer ranges. And on top of that, this does hurt our recoil control a little bit, which if we have a look here, you definitely see that your bursts kick upwards a little bit more than without this barrel. And you do get the odd outlier that kicks quite a bit higher. Now, is it a massive difference? No, not really. I would say you still get a relatively decent spread here as long as you're keeping yourself relatively close, but it is something you have to look out for. As a result, if you want to be a bit more aggressive with this gun, I'd absolutely recommend using this barrel. As for the next one, this is the 24.4-inch sniper barrel, and with this one, this improves our damage range by roughly 35%, which is a great increase to your damage range. Those one burst kills will be a lot more consistent at range. Also, this helps with our bullet velocity and our recoil control, which if we have a look at the recoil on this one, you definitely see a very noticeable improvement over the base recoil. And again, this is going to mean you're going to get more consistent one burst kills, especially when you start stretching that range out a little bit. However, this does come at the cost of a slower aim down sight time. It's about 14% slower, so your new aim down sight time is 367 milliseconds, which is just as slow as the Odin, which is very slow. And on top of this, our movement speed is slowed down by about 3%, which is a pretty big loss to your movement speed. So if you are hanging back and picking people off, these won't be that big of an issue for you, but it takes away a lot of your ability to be aggressive while using this barrel. As for the last barrel that we have access to on the FR556, I'm going to tell you guys right up front, stay away from this barrel. This one's called the Forge Tac Ultralight, and with this, the only pro is it says that it improves your aim down sight speed, and the con is bullet velocity. Based on my tests, and I double and triple checked this because it was a strange result, this doesn't have any measurable impact to your aim down sight time. So there's literally no benefit to using this barrel. But with that, it's time to move on to the other two unique attachments with the FR556, and these are the extended mag attachments. First off, we have access to the 50 round extended mags, which with this one, it says it reduces your aim down sight speed, which it doesn't. Based on my tests, there is no measurable change at 60 FPS. And also, we get a very slight reduction to our movement speed at just 1%. Now, if you want to go a little bit bigger, you can use the 60 round magazine, which again, doesn't hurt your aim down sight time, even though it says that it does. But with this, you do get a 3% reduction to your movement speed, which is much more noticeable than that 1% reduction with the 50 round magazine. And with that, that wraps it up for all of the important stats to know with the FR556. However, now I want to get into some excellent attachment combinations as well as example class setups. And first up, we have more of a long-range traditional burst rifle setup. With this, we are using that 24.4-inch barrel, so we get improved range. We also get better recoil properties with that, so it's going to help us pick those people off at longer ranges. We're also using a tac laser on this, so we can aim down sight a little bit faster. It also helps with our aiming stability, which is important when it comes to a burst gun. Also, we are using an optic on there. I would say just use whatever you're comfortable with. Generally, I'm comfortable with any of the reflex sort of sights. Next up in the stock section, we are using the FSS tac wrap on this, which helps a little bit with our aim down sight time to counteract the slower aim down sight time with that 24-inch barrel. And finally, we have the Commando foregrip, which is going to help a little bit with the side-to-side bounce within our burst. And this might seem kind of strange because normally with a burst gun, you want to make sure it doesn't kick upwards within the burst too much. However, what I found in my testing when I was stacking something that also helped with vertical recoil on top of that 24-inch barrel is I was getting a negligible improvement with that, and therefore you see much more of an improvement when you help with the recoil stabilization, so the side-to-side bounce within the burst, when combining it with that 24-inch barrel. Taking this into an example class setup, this one's designed mainly for ground war modes, where we're hanging back a little bit and trying to pick people off at sort of mid to somewhat longer ranges. Keep in mind, this doesn't really excel for like counter sniping across the map, simply because even with all these attachments, you're going to get some recoil within that burst, and you might hit your first bullet, but the other two will probably go over their head. So typically you want to keep yourself somewhat mid-range with this, or mid to slightly longer range. And for our secondary, we've got the Desert Eagle. For our perks, we've got EOD, Kill Chain, so we can go on those longer streaks and chain them together, as well as Shrapnel, so we get 2 thermites to deal with the tanks. And our tactical with this is going to be a Stim Shot. You guys have probably seen in this series very similar setups in the past. This is what I really like using in ground war modes. As for the next one, with this attachment combination, this is designed more to be a bit more aggressive. Now, of course, you still have to be very precise with your shots, but it allows you to get around the map a bit more effectively. You also want to keep yourself relatively close quarters with this. And with this one, we're using the 15.9-inch barrel, which will help with that aim down sight time, as well as our movement speed, but it's mainly for aim down sight time. Our optic is once again going to be a reflex sight of your choice. I really like using an optic while using a burst gun. Our stock is going to be the Ultralight hollow stock, which helps with our aim down sight stray speed, which can be helpful in close quarter situations. Then we've got a stippled grip on there to help a little bit with our sprint out time, and it helps even more with our aim down sight time on top of the barrel, which is great. So this is a lot more snappy. And that just leaves us with the Merc foregrip, which really helps keep that burst nice and tight when it comes to that vertical recoil. Now, taking this one into an example class setup, this one I really like using on these smaller maps like Shoot House, for instance, or maybe like Gun Runner or other 6v6 style maps. And with this secondary of your choice, I've just got the M19 on there, mainly because I'm leveling up the M19 at the moment. We've also got EOD, Hardline, as well as Battle Hardened. Our lethal is a C4, and our tactical is once again going to be a stim shot. This setup can be practically unstoppable as long as you're consistently hitting those one burst kills, because nothing else really competes in the time to kill department. Additionally, when you're up close and personal, it's actually quite easy to consistently hit all of the bullets in your bursts, and this makes this a very solid class setup in the right hands. But with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the FR556. As for my personal thoughts on this gun, I think it's great. I think this is an awesome burst gun. It's not really the traditional style of burst gun where you can sit back and pick people off at really, really long ranges. It's more designed for that slightly aggressive play with mid-range engagements for the most part. Now, another thing I did want to mention here is a lot of people say they really like using this in semi-auto mode, which you can absolutely do. You can just swap over your fire mode at any time if you want. And I will say this is great if you're trying to pick off a head glitcher at longer ranges, because otherwise with the burst, your recoil would just take them over their head after the first bullet hits. Whereas with semi-auto, you can control that a lot better. But aside from those situations, I tend to just leave it in burst mode, and I've found quite a bit of success with it. Of course, though, I'd like to know in the comments section below, what are your thoughts on the FR556 in Modern Warfare? Do you like this gun? Do you not like it at all? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of this series, I will leave a link to the playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.